Malekus, the Burning Truth. Determined to bring Menoth's glory to the world, Malekus, the Burning Truth, carries with him the righteous fires of the Creator. His arrival is announced by his booming voice reading passages aloud from the canon of the true law. His departure is accompanied by the ashes of non-believers. Malekus spent his youth as a Morrowind orphanage in a small town just outside Caspia, where he was subjected to hard labor and unspeakable abuses by the authority of the unscrupulous headmaster. This early experience instilled in Malekus a hatred of the corruptible Morrowind faith. It was not until he heard the word of Menoth shouted out by a zealous street preacher that the boy saw a means to an end of his horrid existence. The Creator's righteous fire would cleanse his past and make way for a better future. After setting fire to the orphanage, he made his way to the Protectorate and pledged his life to the service of the Creator. He felt particularly captivated by the notion of holy fire and the freedom it granted him. Malekus spent the next years in the halls of the Flame Guard Temple and initially trained in combat, expecting to become a soldier. It did not take long for his instructor to discover his budding warcaster talent, at which point Fiora, priestess of the flame herself, requested his admittance to the Insidium. There he would ultimately serve as both priest and cleanser, tasked with burning away impurity both within the borders of the Protectorate and outside them. Malekus was elated at being singled out among his peers for this work, and he never forgets Fiora's role in shaping his path. From the moment he entered the Incendium, Malekus has dedicated himself to Fiora's service, a dedication that has aided his rise. He now serves as the primary intermediary between Fiora and her cleansers. Through the eternal fires of Menoth, Malekus has seen himself reborn into the existence free from the pain and misery that once tormented him. He has made it his life's work to bring the same release to those oppressed by the worship of other gods. Malekus is ever willing to intercede on behalf of those willing to return to Menoth's embrace, but he has only scouring flames for those who persist in blinding heresy. The Northern Crusade has opened new avenues for the Warcaster as he attempts to guide the wayward back to the worship of the Creator. As much as Malekus detests the corruption he finds rampant in others, he has never conquered his fear of the weakness inherent in himself. All too aware of how quickly impurity can take root, he regularly cleanses himself through flagellation and self-inflicted burns to maintain clarity of mind while performing his essential duties. Scars riddle his flesh beneath his armor like a roadmap of his past transgressions. So yeah, this guy is definitely a fire lover, and with Protectorate that does make sense, and he would always find a happy home there. Self-flagellation is actually pretty common among the most pious of worshippers of Menoth, so he kind of fits the mold a little bit. But yeah, booming voice, fire, righteous judgment, the right-hand man of Fiora, which would make sense since he is also very big into the flames. So yeah, he looks uber dangerous, and I'm not sure what else to say about him outside of him just liking to catch stuff on fire. He's definitely a pyro, so. But let's read his Mark 3 to Mark 4 changes and see if there is any at all. And of course, we'll start with his stats, because, well, that's always where we start. His speed is 5, his mat is a 6, his rat has gone from a 6 to a 7, so he's got a little upgrade on his range attacks. His defense is at 14, armor 16. He is a particularly deadly spellcaster at a magic ability of 7 and a control range of 14. He is also immune to fire, as most of the Menoth casters who are enjoying fire are. Let's check on his abilities, see if anything changed there. He still has Ashen Veil. Ashen Veil is always a fantastic defense for these guys. So this model has concealment, and living models without concealment, or without resistance to fire, suffer -2 to all their attack rolls while within 2 of this model. And that's not just protecting him, this is protecting anybody within that 2-inch range of him, so very nice to have. So basically his defense goes up to a 14 for both ranged and melee attacks, unless they have immunity to fire. Then it appears that he no longer has Divine Passages anymore as his second ability, so all of the Fabled Hymn, Fable of Ash, Hymn of Might, Verse of Cinder has been removed, probably to simplify his character a little bit and make him better at what he is good at. but it has been replaced with the Field Marshal Ashen Veil, so all of his cohort models in his battle group gain Ashen Veil as well, so it spreads out that, well, they get a defense buff from range attacks and melee attacks, but then it also spreads out that Ashen Veil so they can give other people that type of protection against melee attacks as well, so that's still pretty nice. Unfortunately, I suppose they wanted to simplify this character up a little bit, and that's just what we got to lose. So, but let's check out his weapons, see if his weapons have changed at all. And no, it doesn't appear his weapons changed at all, except for, so all warcaster, well, basically all warcasters, warlocks, leader models, they all have dual attack, which is great. So they can make ranged and melee attacks while in, well, all that stuff. But he has his Scoring Flames, which is a spray 10, rate of fire 1, POW 13, causes fire damage and continuous fire effect. And he has the ability to use this while in melee as well. So he can actually, you know, run in there, be able to hit people with his burning blades and spray attack them at the same time, which makes sense. I believe that most spray weapons are also, you know, ability to use in melee as well, because, well, they're spray. That just makes sense. Then he still has his burning blades as well. His burning blades are a Mat 6, range 2, so it's a reach weapon. POW 12, and also causes continuous fire. So that is great for him that he still has all those weapons, and they still do the exact same amount of damage. And then his feat, the Raging Inferno, this has changed slightly, but not by much. I think it's because the introduction of the command cards would have some issues with his feat, but we'll read it first. So the original one was when an enemy model suffers a fire damage roll in Malekus' control range, you add an additional die to that roll. And then the second part of this is additionally, fire continuous effects that affect enemy models in Malekus' control range cannot expire. So we have the first part, but the second part's been removed in Mark IV. So, but the ability for especially menoth guys to be able to really, you know, hammer in on the fire damage rolls, and yeah, so you automatically get boosted. Well, it's not even boosted; it's an additional damage die. So if you have a warjack, you can also boost it on top. So for anything that does fire damage rolls, you get an additional die of damage on it. So you can get up to a 4 dice set. So yeah, no, that's a one that's, you know, incredibly good for all Protectorate models that use fire. So I don't think it's really that much of a hindrance not being able to, you know, not turn off fire continuous effects, just because it's on the fire damage rolls anyway. So maybe it was a balanced situation. I don't know. I don't work for a privateerpress, so. But let's check out his spells, see what we got here. Looks like we still have a Banishing Ward. So enemy upkeep spells and animize on target friendly model/unit expire, and affected models cannot be targeted by enemy spells or animi, and it is upkeepable, so that is great. Looks like we still have Ignite. So target friendly faction model/unit gain a +2 to their melee attack damage rolls, and they gain the critical continuous fire effect, so that is nice. And it appears that the spell Brand of Fire has been replaced with Immolation. Immolation's much simpler and a little bit cheaper of a spell, but the original Brand of Fire that's been replaced is it deals fire damage, and then on a hit, target model in D3 nearest models within 5 inches suffer the continuous fire effect. So that is nice, pretty decent, but it's been replaced with Immolation. Immolation causes fire damage on a critical hit. Model hit suffers a fire continuous effect. It's a little bit cheaper because it's a one target guy, a little bit less range, but it still catches people on fire. Maybe not as many people, but that's what we got to deal with on that for Mark IV. Then he still has his Open Fire. So cost 1 in his control range. Target cohort model in this model's battle group that is in his control range can immediately make 1 basic ranged attack, and a model can be targeted by Open Fire only once. So for 1 focus, you can make somebody make a ranged attack, and for 1 focus, that's actually not bad. And you can actually, that basically increases the rate of fire by 1. So that's never a bad thing, especially if they're shooting out flames for this particular warcaster. So, and he already has 7 focus, so, you know, what's 1 to get another attack in, right? And then we still have Scourge. So on a direct hit, models hit by this attack become knocked down. So always good to be able to knock models down. And this is auto knockdown, well, as long as you hit. So, and he already has a, you know, a 7 on his stuff. It's a range 8, costs 4, so it's pretty costly. And it's an AoE 2, so you're still knocking down 3 models minimum, so, or maximum. So that is always a phenomenal. So this guy's basically a tinderbox kind of caster. So you want him to be in there with flames, as many flames you can get. Keep the flames coming, and he has that Ashen Veil that he can kind of spread around his army as long as you keep those warjacks spread around. And he has a flamethrower, and well, flamethrowers are never a bad thing, at least not in my experience, unless of course you're on the other side of a flamethrower, and then that's a bad thing all around.